Well, welcome back, everybody. I've really been enjoying this series, and now it's time to get a little more frightening because I have pretty much gotten my first book to where I want it to go. I do expect to go back in and do some more polishing, more looking, especially once I have finished. Reading the second and third book, and as I work on the fourth one, which I'm going to start working on the fourth one coming up for the Novel 90 Challenge. So that's going to be starting October 1st. So I kind of need to know what's going on. So I'm not going to be able to finish all of the way that I'm going to edit the second and third book just yet. I don't think I'm going to try to sort of binge do some of this. I'm really hoping that these books are in better shape than the first one was. Not that the first one was in that bad of shape, but I'm hoping they're in better shape because, yeah, that would be good for my schedule. But if they're not, then what I will do is address the high level plot issues, the developmental edit stuff, and really focus in on the line editing, the stylistic choices, things like that. Kind of interwoven with my planning stage, which is going to be the month of October for my fourth book, leading into my writing stage, leading into, and hopefully have that all done so that when I'm in the editing stage for the fourth book, I can focus in on that. It is a lot. I feel a little bit like I'm juggling 20 things at the same time, but I also tend to work well like this. I tend to thrive in a overwhelming sort of environment creatively for whatever reason, and I know a lot of other people work like this too. I know about like teachers that they spend their whole school year thinking of books, and then they spend their summer vacation, their time off, writing and editing, and it's like they get all this done, and then that's it. And then the rest of the year is their release schedule, and then they're thinking, and then lather, rinse, repeat. So I guess what I'm trying to do is justify my my cramming style here. But like I said, my hope is that these books are in better shape than the other one. I did remember thinking they were better at the time, but I also don't remember them very well. So it's going to be very interesting. So yeah, let's kind of dive in. I'm going to first run the story analyzer and see what's under the hood a little bit here. Now, what's interesting is that I don't really want to look at the story analyzer too closely on this story, and that's because, again, I don't remember it all that much, and so it's almost like a spoiler alert if I read it too much. I have a general sense of what happens. I remember like kind of the main plot. There's a mystery. Pretty sure I remember who the person is that they're after. At some of the misdirects, so it's not going to completely shock me. But I am going to look at it overall just a moment, and here I see where the story excels. I'm just reading it really closely. 2, 6, 12, 20. I like that because I believe it's 20 chapters. Yep. So 20 chapters. It is a much, much shorter book than the other one. It's only 57,000 words, and I forgot that it was that much shorter. So that could be an indication that I need to expand. I'm generally not somebody who is. I'm not generally somebody who is a huge stickler when it comes to word count exactly. I want to give an audience a satisfying experience, and 57 is slimish, even for young adults, slimish, right? It really should be more in the 70 range, and that's more where the other one has ended up. It's like 65 right now. So it does give me wiggle room to potentially expand. So I'm going to be looking for that as I go in my little notes. And of course, I'm going to be looking for things that I set up, things that I paid off. But what I'm going to do is a very different process than last time. So this might be a process you would use if you have a similar experience where you have an old work where you don't really remember what you wrote. I am going to read the chapter first, and then I'm going to look at the story analyzer. So I'm not going to look at the story analyzer first. I don't want to inform my opinion. I'm going to read it and then look, and I'm going to see what it says. It should be fresh in my mind so I can think of whether or not, if what it's saying is ringing true for me, and then I will make some notes. I'm not going to do a lot of edits because, again, I don't really know this book. So this is really more of a read, just to remember what's there, writing some notes as I go. Some of the notes may even become redundant by the end because if I'm like, I hope I paid off this foreshadowing. If I did, I could just delete it and things like that. But yeah, that's going to be how it's going to go. So I don't know how terribly exciting this will be to watch. So I'm probably going to mostly do the thing and then update you once I am finished rather than kind of have you look over my shoulder for this entire process. So it could be that this episode is going to be a bit on the shorter side since that's going to be the majority of what I'm doing. But we'll find out. I like to make this very organic and I like to see how it's going. So we're going to find out together. But anyway, time to read. All right, so immediately I catch a plot hole or a mistake. In the first book, I indicate that Aaron broke his leg. In the second book, I indicate that Aaron broke his arm. Wah wah consistency, so I will be fixing that. Immediately, I'm kind of wondering. I like this scene, but if this is the right scene to start the book in, so I'm going to write a note and ask myself that question. So, one thing that the story analyzer really helps me was it said chapter one began with the protagonist unnamed because I never gave the protagonist name. It was written from their point of view as I did this, I did that, and nobody ever used their name. And so, if you didn't know the character's name, granted, it is the sequel, so you probably do, you wouldn't know. And so I put it in. So now, of course, it says protagonist Rose. It is the protagonist Rose. But yeah, really helpful. I just didn't think about the fact that I never mentioned the protagonist's name. I really should have. So thank you, Story Analyzer. Okay, I mean, I don't want to like pat myself on the back too much, but no, I really like this chat. This has been really fun because it's like I'm experiencing again for the first time some of the jokes I didn't remember, so I'm laughing at them. Yeah, I think this is a really good opening. I do wonder whether or not this is a better scene than the last one, but it does there's things that happen in this scene that only make sense because of the scene before it. So I'm gonna ask myself that question. I think I'm okay with the opening scene being what it is. This is really where the plot gets going, which is the second chapter. But that first chapter is not bad. Um, I might tweak it, but I do like how it's going so far for sure. So yeah. Now, I will say the same sort of issues that I had with the first book, of course, apply here. I'm stark, I'm a little brisk. Um, I can pad it out. And I mean, that sounds bad, like I'm going to like add things that don't matter, but I can let it breathe more. And I really need to, especially like I said earlier, it's a bit short. Okay, so yeah. So the good news. The the good news is that I do think there are a lot of really great ideas in this book. I think the main plot is interesting. I think I'm trying to be nice. I think I have some interesting character development. I like where I took a lot of the characters. On the flip side, they got a lot of problems. I got a lot of problems with this one. I went way too dialogue heavy, like bananas. Like there is like it's all talky, 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 talky. And not only is it like, well, just add more stuff. No, no, like it's literally like talky, talky, talky. Like it's like we're gonna go over here and sit down and talk. And we're gonna go over here and sit down and talk. It's a mystery, and it sort of has that kind of vibe where it's like looking for clues and stuff, but now that of course I've done a lot more in this and I've researched and I've taught mystery classes and things like that, I'm like, yeah, I'm not following a lot of my own best advice, right? The kind of things that I would tell my mystery authors if I was editing their own material, like, what was I doing? So this was definitely a me not seeing my own issues, right? But oh, it's so there now. It's so there now. Now that being said, this isn't like a complete like blah. We have to start over. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to reframe some of the clues as I'm going to need to clarify some of the through line. One of the biggest problems was I made the main character very reactive. It's very easy to do in a mystery, right? because it really is almost a standard mystery plot. Um, just there is a serial killer and they're trying to figure out what they're up to and who they are and how they're doing what they're doing. And it's pretty much okay. I like it. I like the twist pretty well about it. Again, that could be better because it's more of a thriller than a mystery, but it's not thrilling. See, this is the is the fact it should be a mystery and that it should be clues. But I actually don't really give you enough information for you to kind of like guess who it is. You might be able to guess how they're doing it. I do give you enough information for that. But I do not give you enough information for you to really surmise who it is. I just tell you who it is. So that's more of a thriller, but then it's not really thrilling. It's like they do stake out at a place and like watch as something happens. But there's not like dramatic chase scenes. There's not really life in jeopardy until the very end. So it's kind of And for something that promises like people have all these really cool superpowers and stuff like that, I'm like leaving so much free money on the ground. Like, what in the world? So I am going to make some adjustments. That's all I'm going to say. What I am going to do, I'm going to say the first thing I'm going to do, and this is something that's very helpful about having the story analyzer, right? Because I was going through, and then I was just like, with the analyzer and reading it, but I was like, "No, I just need to read this because I don't really remember it, and yeah, I just need to read it. And then I was making some notes as I was going, but now that I'm done, I'm going to go to the overall and I am going to pull my entire timeline. Now, what's great about this is an actual just summary of everything that happens. So I don't have to remember all that happens in this book. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract it into a note, copy to note. You can see it's kind of small, but it's that yellow button. And then, yep, now it's in my note. And now I'm going to go to my notes and I am literally going to pick this thing apart. I can make it bigger and now I can look at all of these points and I can decide, all right, how am I moving things around? What sort of things am I changing? I will say that probably a good percentage of what is on the page is going to stay. It's going to be different framing. So I think we're going to have similar conversations. But again, I need it to move. I need it to have excitement. I need it to have more things. And I'm going to think about it. I I kind of painted myself into a corner because this is a young adult series, and yet the mystery was a serial killer. And it's like, why in the world would a random ragtag band of people be able to investigate a serial killer and what they're up to and things like that, and all of that. So I actually think I'm going to modify it somewhat in order to create more stakes for them to get involved and also more of an opportunity for them to get involved so they can actually get involved. But I really have to think this through. I did sort of paint myself into a corner. I mean, obviously, I could just go through right now and just leave it as it is. It's not horrible, right? I mean, I suppose boring is pretty terrible, but it's not horrible. It's just bland, right? And like I said, the biggest issue is that it's not. I'm kind of thinking this as I'm saying this out loud. The biggest issue is that it's really not a mystery, and it's really not a thriller, and it's really not an adventure. It's kind of nothing. It's like it has a little bit of those elements, but I'm not leaning into anything enough. So I suppose I could lean further into the mystery, right? Possibly. That might make the most sense considering who's involved. But even then, I still need to have action and intrigue and things like that in some manner. But that being said, I know I sound like super harsh, and in some ways I do feel pretty harsh about it. Like, there's a lot about it I'm like, yeah, especially because it just gets plotting with a lot of the dialogue and things like that. But, there's other things about it that I think are really, really cool. And I do think the world building is really cool. I do expand a lot about what is going on in the world. I think some character development is very interesting, in here. Some of the characters sort of flattened out, but other ones don't, and they take very interesting turns, and I think it works well. But I think I could actually turn up the temperature even a bit more on that. It's just a lot. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how I do this because, as you may realize, I'm trying to basically revise this whole series and write my fourth book. Now, in terms of how this would affect the fourth book, I don't think that much that I change in here is going to affect the fourth book all that much because the major things that shift, the major character development that happens, I really, really like. So, how the characters are different at the end of this book versus the beginning of this book is going to stay. The big revelations you learn about the world are going to stay as well. So, I don't think it really affects too much for the series. And yeah, I mean, I could kind of keep it as like a lackluster episode, but I don't really want to do that. And it's interesting because the reviews for this were actually in general much stronger. Although when I went back, I did notice I had a 1-star review for this on Amazon, and I never had a 1-star review for my first book. And when I looked at the 1-star review, yeah, it sort of rang true. I understand. So I think so I do think I really want to go through and adjust it. So we'll see. I mean, I'm still planning my project of writing my fourth book. That's still going to be on track. What I'm going to need to do though is figure out timing. I may not be able to fully release that fourth book because I might have to do some more cleanup on the second and the third book. Um, I mean, I could always pivot to a completely different book altogether, but I don't think any of you would want me to do that. So even though I do want to do a book as part of the Novel 90 challenge, and I think I very much can still do that, I will probably not have the entire series all buttoned up in the time frame that I want it. That being said, though, I'm glad to return to it because I feel like I noticed there was a lack of momentum, and I wonder whether or not a lot of people did start reading the second book and were like, "Oh, this isn't the direction I wanted this series to go." I didn't sign up for something that felt more like a cozy mystery. I actually wanted something that felt more like, the first one kind of promised you something that's maybe more like a Marvel movie or something, and so. It's tricky. I definitely need to make some adjustments. So, yeah, I think I can do it though. I have some ideas already percolating and whatnot. And I will also need to read the third book. So, I think what for now, I'm going to go through here, I'm going to mess with the timeline, but I'm also going to somewhat put a pin in this and be like, okay, book 2, because I just want to know like what big things I might change because of the series, and then I'm gonna pin in it, and then I'm gonna go to book 3, and read that, and hopefully it's not as bad. I don't think it is. I remember some action sequences in book 3. I remember some intrigue. I think book 3 is better, but I went into this thinking this was going to be a lot better than the first book, and I don't think it is. I don't. There are certain moments that I think are really cool, but in general, no. I do think this is a step down, and I don't want to have that. So I will put a pin in it for now, and then I'm going to read book 3, and then I should be ready because starting on Tuesday, I'm supposed to be working on book 4. So, this has become a little bit frantic, but it's all right. I do have all month of October basically to plan out book 4, and that's a pretty long time for me to plan out a book. Um, we'll see. I also had a lot of ideas of what would happen in it already, so it's not from scratch. I already have a lot of things to set up. The nice thing about a fourth book in a 4-book series is that at that point you don't really want to introduce too many new things. You want to pay off what you have. Uh, and so, yeah, and I mean, the good news is that since I'm revising everything, anything that I want to have in the fourth book and then be foreshadowed, I can go back and I can fix it, and it'll look all so planned out. So, yeah. In general, though, I don't want to sound like I'm too disheartened. I do like this series. I think there's a lot of great ideas. In some ways, I'm more empowered to try to fix something, whereas the first one it felt like polishing. This is more of a fixer-upper. So we'll see what happens. For any of you who want to, check them out, you can see them in their current form. And you can see how they adjust. I'm not going to be doing like multiple editions. Anybody who buys like the current one will be able to just download the new one. So yeah, if you're curious, if you're curious to read a book that's a little bit clunky with way too much dialogue and doesn't have a lot of action, I got a great one for you. Anyway, I will see you all around. Thank you so much for your support. This has been a great project, and yeah, I'm just excited to get back into writing. It's good. I've been editing, analyzing, helping others so much that it's time to do something for myself. So anyway, I will see you around. Bye everyone.